Netflix recently released a three-part series on Lou Pearlman, okay, by the name of Dirty Pop, the boy band scam. Now, I'm gonna tell you guys something. I personally feel like there's been so many people that have covered Lou Pearlman thoroughly, so much, and there's just so much, it's even now to it to even talk about because of just how complex this scam was. The fact that it was one of the longest running scams. You're talking about 30 years. How the courts, after ruling against Lou Pearlman, they haven't been able to recover all the money from the scamming. There was just so many people scam. So I just got done watching the three-part series. And in my opinion, like I said, like I feel like this has been covered very thoroughly, but every time that it's covered, you're always learning something new. So there's never like anytime that somebody covers Lou Pearlman, it's never a situation where you're just kind of like, I knew that from there. No, like there's more to it. There's layers to it, right? So let's talk a little bit about this series. If you're going to talk about Backstreet Boys and NSYNC, you cannot not mention Lou Pearlman because Lou Pearlman was truly the start of some of these individuals. Lou Pearlman was not a stupid man by all means, right? He attended Queens College and, he had a cousin who was famous, Art Garfunkel. He knew what he was doing. He knew how to cater to people. He knew what the people wanted. And he very much catered to a specific age group.
What he does is take teenage boys who might otherwise lead unremarkable lives and turn them into rich, famous pop music stars. The trouble is, Pearlman's creations have been leaving him recently. They say Lou takes far more than his fair share of their cash. So tonight we begin with a question. Are the boys biting the hand that feeds them? Or is the mentor taking advantage of his naive creations? The members of both groups have shared one very special surrogate father, Lou Pearlman. Lou launched both groups. His musical sons used to call him Big Poppa. Now they call him a thief and a con man.
The kids should take a step back and say, how'd I get here? Who took the risk? Who put up all the money? Who's my real Big Poppa?
The Backstreet Boys didn't exist as a group before they met. In this rare footage, we can see what they looked like before Lou turned them into his first boy band.
What is the touch? I think I'm a great cultivator. And these guys are my family. I put the money out to help them where they don't have to worry about their jobs, they don't have to worry about school. We provide tutors, we give them choreographers, we give them vocal lessons.
Pearlman, an accountant from Queens, New York, belongs to a family that made its fortune chartering jets. Strangely enough, it was a plane charter that introduced Lou to his music business future. In 1991, Pearlman chartered a plane to the hit group New Kids on the Block. The group dazzled him.
And I just questioned, how could these kids afford an airplane? And I was told, these kids did $200 million in record sales and $800 million in touring and merchandising. I was like, I'm in the wrong business.
So what'd you do?
I said, I think I can do that. I think I can put a group like that together.
Pearlman died in 2016 in prison, right? And, he was eventually exposed, through the court system, through the investigation, through various journalists. He was exposed as a fraudster who scammed investors out of hundreds of millions of dollars, okay? And in this specific series, you have AJ McLean, Howie, Chris Kirkpatrick, Eric Michael Estrada from O-Town. All these people are coming forward and being interviewed. And what's so interesting, AJ McLean says, like, listen, there would be no NSYNC, there would be no Backstreet Boys without Lou, period. He said, but some of us have wounds that have never healed and that may never heal. In the first episode, it features the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC really talking about Lou Pearlman taking advantage of them, him being the sixth member of each group. At first, not really knowing about keeping NSYNC hush hush while Backstreet Boys was blowing up in Germany and then coming over to the US. And then the minute that they decide, we're just gonna rest. Like we don't feel like doing anything Disney right now. Here comes NSYNC ready to fill in those spots. And the minute that NSYNC, took that special with Disney, it's when NSYNC blew up. Now, let me just say this. This is a bit of nostalgia for me because I do remember being in middle school and high school, specifically in middle school, where you would have like a group of girls that would be like team Backstreet Boys, and then you'd have the other group that would be like team NSYNC. And it was crazy because it was like the marketing for both of these bands was just interesting. To me, Backstreet Boys was a bit of a like dark edge, clean, different kind of tone, like the way they would dress. There was this level of maturity that they projected through their music and their dancing. And then you had NSYNC, which was more of like the boy next door type of band. They catered, I think, to maybe, in my opinion, what I remember is like it seemed like a very younger popish generation, where Backstreet Boys was a little bit more mature and NSYNC was a bit more, I don't know, I would say like teeny boppy, just a bit, just a bit. But what was so interesting is that even though, you had this like competition going on between maybe the fan base, who's better NSYNC, who's better Backstreet Boys, right? And the man that created both, and then has this, like he created his own competition, right? Pepsi and Cola. He created both of these, what looks to be two different types of, very much both boy bands, but different type of mix and style, right? Having that fallout and having the boys feel betrayed by maybe Blue Pearlman, having that happen, I think was maybe the beginning of the end to a certain degree, right? Because then the lawsuits came up. Then they were getting paid, and they were getting paid shit, right? Chris Kirkpatrick said at the Netflix documentary, he said that, it was his first time seeing his, a $10,000 check, right? And just feeling like, oh my God, that's a lot of money, right? When somebody so young at that age, somebody gives you $10,000 and you're just like seeing it for the first time, and you've been working and working, seeing that in writing, I mean, that's a lot of money. And then one of the bandmates asked him, well, okay, like that's $10,000. How much did you make a year working at a fast food restaurant or something like that? And then that's when he realized, he's like, I made more working at this fast food joint, right, than I did being this super mega star that everybody's idolizing, and they got posters of you, right? So it's like, how the hell is it that Lou Pearlman has all this money and these boys are starving boys? I couldn't help but remember, the time where TLC made history, where, they were at the Grammys and basically told everybody, we are as broke as can be.
I'll tell it. We're not going to sugarcoat anything anymore. We've been quiet long enough. Can I get an amen? Amen! All right. All right. Well, I'll put it to you this way. We are the biggest selling female group ever. 10 million albums worldwide. We have worked very hard. We have been in this business for 5 years. And we are broke as broke can be. And we're not like trying to be a sad story. If that was the case, we would have been on everybody's talk show talking about how broke we are. We haven't done that. I know it's hard to believe because we've sold so many albums, but it is possible. That's the deal here. So, and we're not happy at all. But for real, tonight, this is all we wanted. We wanted to win a Grammy, at least one, and we won 2. And that proves that we are the jam.
So here they are, these beautiful women, these boy bands, all these people wearing brand name stuff, modeling, projecting wealth and happiness and music and good looking. And, they got it all. And then come to find out that all these people are broke, right? And the ones that are reaping and making money are the producers, the labels, the people behind them. And this was in 1996. Such an iconic moment, right? And then shortly after, you had the Lou Pearlman lawsuit with the Backstreet Boys. All this stuff was going on, right? So it just goes to show just how evil the industry is, and how overworked some of these folks are. And how complicit some of the people even around them can be. So NSYNC and Backstreet Boys, they settle. They both have different types of settlements, but they settle with Lou Pearlman. They had to basically, Backstreet had to buy Lou Pearlman out, and Sync had to set. They had to fight for their name. I still remember this part, and it just became a huge thing, But it even this wasn't like the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC died. They continued on. I mean, the Backstreet Boys is still touring till this day. And I mean, they can do no wrong with their fan base. They will support them. NSYNC, I mean, they all kind of did different things and everything. They're, if you get them together, yeah, they're known. But really the one that came, I would guess, more successful out of the bunch would be Justin Timberlake, of course. He did his own thing and continued on, and everybody else kind of did different things, right? But truly, it was the splitting of these groups that began the ending of the biggest con, right? Because then you had in 2008, there was after these lawsuits, more legal trouble started brewing. But what was so amazing to me, because this is such a pivotal moment, I think, in history for any millennial that followed any of this music, right? You would think that Lou Pearlman's like the legal trouble and the FBI raiding into people's houses and going in there and checking, and concerns about him frauding people, you would think that that would be enough for everyone.
My name is Jacqueline Dowd. I was an assistant attorney general and bureau chief of the Economic Crimes Unit in Orlando. We at the Economic Crimes Unit had an investigation going into this company that we thought was deceiving people about modeling. They would approach people in shopping malls and stadiums. I'm going to set you up with a photographer. You need to have some good pictures taken. You spend a lot of money on the pictures and nothing else ever really happens. We started getting consumer complaints, and we got them in a volume that really did tell us we needed to take a look at what was going on.
I mean, it was amazing to see that the willingness for some people to even stay in that environment. There was this one, I remember seeing an interview a couple years ago that YouTube did. It was like the Boy Band Con or something like that. It was like a series. And they talked about the fact, this was Ashley from O-Town. He talked about the fact that it wouldn't be abnormal to have like bands audition, or they're doing their everyday singing and dancing and whatever, right? And then the FBI is coming to raid, and it's like, back to business, nothing to see here, or they're coming to collect something. And it's like you would think things like that would make people stop and say, whoa, Lou Pearlman, what the hell are you doing? But no, they just continued like business was nothing,
We were in meetings with him literally from day one. He would have to stop the meeting because he was being investigated by the FBI. And no joke, the FBI would come in to interview.
Like, wow, okay, cool, like business as usual. Let's proceed. The first and the second episode really highlights that. In 2008, Lou Pearlman was sentenced to 25 years in prison on charges of conspiracy, money laundering, and making false statements during a bankruptcy proceeding. He was still in prison when he died of cardiac arrest. Now, what is so fascinating is Lou Pearlman's childhood. There are people that speak here in this documentary, this docuseries, 3-part series, that speak on Lou Pearlman's childhood and just the different things that they encountered, the blimps and the Jordache, the idea of the blimp and making it huge as an advertisement piece, getting endorsed by like McDonald's, by Jordache, by all these folks. And so finding really a connection between advertisement and blimps. And I mean, like I said, Lou Pearlman was not a stupid man. He was a very smart man. He just, I am trying to understand why, even the idea of a blimp as an advertisement, even now, what they've done to blimps now, there's blimps that glow in the dark. There's blimps that, do LED lights. There's blimps. I mean, you got airplanes that have signs, that could be a huge thing as advertisement, right? And the fact that, he was successful to a certain degree, then these blimps started blowing up. And allegedly it was said is because, suddenly they start blowing up, he would get an insurance payout out of these blimps. The Backstreet Boys, especially AJ McLean, shared that, they would have this like god awful space to set up for to rehearse. There was no AC, and it was like a makeshift stage that was like all wood. There was no pavement. They would get like these splinters working and rehearsing on this wood. And they would do hours and hours upon hours of rehearsal there, working towards this dream of making it big, of getting signed to a record deal or something. Howie from the Backstreet Boys speaks in here and he says, back then, what is it? What was child labor laws, right? Like these kids were just working, and none of them were getting paid at that time, right? So if you think about it, it seems like they might have been given a stipend for something, and it sounds like Lou Pearlman was funding some of their stipend through this blimp insurance, right? And he was housing them and everything, but it wasn't a whole lot. It wasn't a whole lot that they were making. Documentary hits on this piece that I thought was very important. Like, how desperate are you to make it? How desperate are you to make it? How are you going to turn down a opportunity? Is there a lot of risk? Yes, but this was an opportunity for anybody to, get a chance. And it seems like that's the basis of a lot of these opportunities. You think of like Quiet on the Set, opportunities. You're coming from maybe your background is not the best. Maybe you don't have a lot of money in your family and you just need that one person to give you a chance. It's the same, issue and story with like Nick Carter. He talked about, he shared his childhood and he's talked about how he kind of came from nothing to like this. And then not only was it Nick Carter, but then you have Aaron Carter, and that's a whole story, right? But the thing about Lou Pearlman is that everything just sounded too good to be true. And a lot of these young artists were just desperate for a break. And Lou Pearlman was a great salesman. I mean, he was a mastermind in showing the world that he can take almost anything and turn them into successful groups. And I mean, that's why they dubbed Lou Pearlman Big Poppa, right? That's what they called him. This man, took these young men under his wings, and there were years and years, right? It didn't matter if, it was said in there, it didn't matter if your contract was a handshake or it was written in raccoon's blood. You're signing it because it's a deal and it's your shot. And this is what one of the NSYNC members quoted in the said, and I quote, in this docuseries, right? Some of these men said that, when they first met Lou Pearlman, it was the first time they felt a level of security. Like, if my car breaks down, Lou can help me out. You're short on rent, Lou can help you out. And some of these people said, I came from living in a trailer to be homeless or whatever, to hear somebody with accolades, hear somebody with a freaking mansion, hear somebody with, he can have a party. He's surrounded by a lot of people with money and notoriety. And that is the fraud behind this, is that surround yourself with what seems to be gold to give yourself notoriety, right? And then people see that, people lay trust, and then they want that from you. Whatever you have, they want a piece of that. Right. By the time that O-Town was around, by the time that, he was doing the Making the Band reality TV show and O-Town was happening, there was already highly public legal troubles for Lou Pearlman, right? With the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC. And, what was interesting is that in these interviews, Eric Michael Estrada would say, you would be lying if people said that there wasn't a massive concern that they had for their band, for their success. However, who was going to give anybody an opportunity like Lou Pearlman was giving them, right? Eric Michael Estrada said, he saw all of these successful things that were happening. So they just kind of said, well, this could be our soon. This was going to be our life. And so we're just going to follow him. And he's the blueprint. Patrick King, who was part of Natural, the group Natural, said that his bandmates essentially signed contracts without really reading them closely. You know, he says beggars can't be choosers. He's someone that we know is going to help our career a lot. And without him, nothing was going to happen. So during the lawsuits of the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC, Chaney Mason was an attorney that worked with Lou Pearlman. You guys might remember Chaney Mason from the Casey Anthony case. So Chaney Mason worked as a defense attorney in the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC lawsuit and believed that at first his client had the right to the group's earnings. The bottom line was that Lou made himself the sixth member of the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC, and he was entitled to rewards for what he did in the creation of the group. Lou spent a lot of money training these kids. This is what Chaney would say in defense. He created the Backstreet Boys. He created NSYNC. Whether they liked it or not, those are undisputed facts. But Chaney Mason soon fell out with Lou Pearlman when he didn't get paid for the work. Chaney Mason said that he had a contingency contract, which means that if he wins an amount of money, I'm getting a percentage of it. Mason explained one of the approximate was $64 million that we settled on that would be owed to Mr. Pearlman. I was entitled to close to $16 million of that as our fees, and it never happened. So Chaney tells Lou, well, you haven't paid me, Lou. I'm going to sue your ass. After that, the FBI got involved, and then the walls began to close in for Lou Pearlman. One of the aspects, at least a little bit, that the docuseries touches on is the pedophile rumors. Now, speculations about whether Pearlman was a sexual predator followed him before and after his death, okay? A lot of people have publicly said, I was not a victim of this. Maybe there was some uncomfortable moments, but they never outright said what it was. The only person that I ever really remember talking about just feeling uncomfortable with Lou Pearlman was Rich Cronin from LFO, who publicly talked about this on the Howard Stern show. Now, Rich Cronin has since died back, I believe, in 2010. So there isn't I don't know how much, because every time people go to Howard Stern show, I never really know what to make of it. I don't really know sensationalism that's coming out of there or actual allegations with validity. But I'm going to leave that to you guys to tell me. I'm playing a little recording here of what Rich Cronin said in the Howard Stern show.
We go in the room. We walk in this gigantic mansion with, you know, everything's for I loved it. Like, it was like C-3PO, Darth Vader. Like, everything was like,
it was like a kid's,
for guys. It was like Wonderland for guys.
Fantasyland.
Yeah. And I was like, holy shit. You know, and then I go into this room and the room was amazing. But then there's this fat guy with no shirt on.
Jabba the Hutt.
You know, he's sitting there with his boxer shorts on. I was like, what the fuck is this?
Right. Meanwhile, how did he even find out about you? He probably just doesn't see anybody.
No, this guy Briz, when I'm told with, I said, with the
Briz
Backstreet Boys a long time ago.
Right.
And he said, I'm telling you, we were on this, doing just high schools. They weren't even big.
Right.
He was like, we got to go on tour with this group. We got to meet Lou Pearlman.
Yeah.
I met him a couple times. I know where he lives.
So losing his underpants when you walked in, huh?
We walked in there.
After you walked through all the Star Wars memorabilia.
It was amazing. The house was amazing. But when we walked in the room, he was sitting there in his underwear.
His cock hanging out.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
He was like, you can sing. You can sing. Come to my office for a second.
Right.
We were there for probably 45 minutes.
Yeah.
He goes, you know, you could be a star.
Yeah.
I said, really? He goes, yeah, man. He goes, take off your shirt. I know for 45 minutes.
Right.
I'm like, all right, I guess that's normal.
Yeah.
I mean, he's
guy's gonna make me a star.
I mean, I come from Boston, and I never met any real pedophile hustlers.
Right.
And I was like, no, I never met one.
It's hard to find them.
So I was like, well, this makes sense. I guess he wants to see me with my shirt off, see if I get in shape. And he says, yeah, you know, you can get in shape. You got to work on your muscles, and you know, we can really work on that. So he tells me we're going to work on my body.
Look at him, and he's going to help you work on your body.
We're going to work on my body, and I'm like, all right, that makes sense. He goes, turn around. And I'm starting to feel like, all right, this guy's weird. Obviously, he's not straight,
right? Which
is fine,
right?
But he's pushing himself on me, and I'm like, all right, let's get out of this room. I'm freaked out already. I'm like, I want to go home. He goes, let's go in the limo. I'm going to take you somewhere. So he takes us down the street, and he's like, oh.
Do you guys feel like there's substantiated things out there about Lou Pearlman? And like I said, it's hard to say because it's like nobody's ever publicly spoken out and said, like, this happened to me. Lou Pearlman did X, Y, and Z. There's been a lot of speculation, but it's been a lot of speculation. So the participants that were in this docuseries were asked, and it was said that they never witnessed anything like that during their time with him. Never saw it, wasn't part of my life, wasn't part of my experience. However, there was some suspect behavior, and this is what Eric Michael Estrada said in the interview. If those things actually did happen, I feel bad for any victims and anyone who was taken advantage of. Chris Kirkpatrick did say that Lou Pearlman was inappropriate with the artists that he employed. He'd always talk about, I need you guys in shape, whatever. You got to get in shape. Like that was a theme, even in the Boy Band Con documentary. They talked a little bit about that. I remember this really weird scene. I think a lot of people felt some type of way about this scene where Aaron Carter was interviewed, right? And he would tell everybody, shut up about that, guys. Like he would teach you how to get in shape and how to do these diamond push-ups or something like that. This is the clip.
My opinion of Lou being a sexual predator is that is not true. That is so foul. He would come up to you and he'd teach you how to do push-ups. He taught me how to do diamond push-ups so I could build my chest. And he's a pedophile? Shut up about that, guys.
For those that have not watched that, you can actually watch that on premium, the Boy Band Con on YouTube, which I think it's interesting. I think it's a very thorough documentary, but that's the first time I ever heard Aaron Carter speak on Lou, and he called him like a gummy bear or something like that, you know. And Aaron Carter clearly has had his issues, and there were speculations about Aaron Carter and Lou Pearlman, but none of that again has been substantiated. There's been nothing, no findings whatsoever. There was also the allegations about the tan beds and people being nude. People have spoken out about that as well. But nothing has turned up. I mean, it's just crazy to me. Like, you would think that nowadays with everything that's going on, things like this would turn up, but maybe somebody's sitting on this information that doesn't want it out. Maybe somebody's sitting on something and they don't want it out. It's the same with Lou Pearlman's money. Forensically, they were able to account for it, but there's so much money that hasn't been able to account for. It said that a lot of the money that he had taken from people is in the Cook's Island somewhere in like banks over there. Any truth to that? I mean, I'd like to know, because then that feeds into like a whole other theory about stuff. And it wouldn't be the first time that powerful people like Lou Pearlman, you have Jeffrey Epstein, for example, don't get stopped. Politicians get bought. People look away. People get on lists. People, you know, we just look away like it is what it is, right? So it wouldn't surprise me. But anyways, I digress. Chris Kirkpatrick said that, you know, it wasn't the first time that he was inappropriate with artists that he employed. He would, you know, kind of tell people, you guys need to get in shape or whatever, and start like grabbing people's arms. This like older man, you know, in his 50s or his 60s or whatever. And you kind of wondered, like, you're telling me to get in shape when you're looking like that? Like, come on now, you know, no shade, but you do have to kind of wonder, like, what are you talking about, Lou Pearlman? Like, You're telling me to get in shape? Patrick King from Natural, who also lived with Pearlman for several years, he said he never witnessed anything. He's not saying that it never happened, but he never witnessed anything. Lou Pearlman's former assistant by the name of Mandy Newland claimed that her boss was touchy-feely with guys, the younger ones especially, but she didn't think anything about it. Like, she didn't think that the behavior crossed the lines. And around this time, people were starting to wonder, like, there were journalists out there. One journalist that was interviewed, her name is Helen Huntley from the St. Petersburg's Time. She would wonder about, like, where was he getting this money? Where was he getting, like, well, what are these investments, things? And then as soon as she started writing about it, that kind of opened up the floodgates for those investors to start asking for their money back. There was a close friend of Lou Pearlman that was also a business partner, and his name was Frankie Vasquez Jr. Now, Frankie Vasquez Jr. allegedly died by suicide. Frankie's mom had also invested with Lou Pearlman, right? And it was said that Frankie was so close, right, to Lou Pearlman that he might have known a lot of the scamming and scheming that was going on. And it just became so much for him that he had it in his life. Like, he couldn't just face the music about what Lou Pearlman was doing. And it's crazy because I was looking into Frankie's obituaries, right? And just seeing what people were writing about him. A really sad situation of a man that, was really close. See, Lou Pearlman had the potential to bring people close to him. He had the potential to make friends. He had the potential, like, that's the piece that we have to understand, that these individuals that scam and scheme and fraud people have the potential to be very likable. And what do you make of this? What do you do with something like this? And here you have Frankie's mom, who, her son is telling her to invest her money there with Lou Pearlman. If your son is telling you, and you're a mom, everything's fine. But she's noticing that Frankie is losing weight. There's something going on with Frankie. He's not doing too well. And then he commits suicide. After this, you do have to wonder. People have speculated about that suicide. Was it really a suicide? Was it something else? Did Lou Pearlman take it to a different level with this friendship? There's been rumors of Lou Pearlman having ties to the mob, doing business with the mob, investments with the mob, like things like that were tied. And some of them you do have to kind of wonder, because you do wonder, like, some of these characters that he was friends with. He was friends with the character before he went to prison by the name of Peter Zaccanino, who was also in the aviation business and then went to jail for, like, a RICO case and various other charges. And he got to spend time with Lou Pearlman behind bars. So you do have to kind of wonder, well, what shady characters was Lou Pearlman hanging out with? Because that seems to be the trend of a lot of these things. Like, people hang out with these shady characters. They're part of this shady character bunch. Like, what's the deal with this, right? After the FBI and the Florida Office of Financial Regulations began investigating Pearlman, it became clear just how deep the fraud went on. And it went on for years, 30 years. Lou Pearlman had claimed that he owned this business by the name of Transcontinental Airlines, where he leased airplanes purchased with investors' money. But the Florida Office of Financial Regulations found out that there were no airplanes at all. You would think that, like, especially with the boy bands, like, if he's owning these or financing or has connections to these airlines, and these boy bands are flying across the world, right? They're not flying with Transcontinental. They're booking with, like, Frontier. They're booking with, like, I don't know, some other airline, right? So they're booking with other airlines while he has this, like, front business called Transcontinental Airlines. You got a whole airline and you own it, but you ain't flying in that airline. Weird, right? Like, weird. So during their investigation, they found out that there were no airplanes. There was no airplanes with transcontinental airlines. Nothing of that sort existed. There were pictures of airplanes, and he would Photoshop certain pictures to make it look like they were airplanes. Lou Pearlman was a master forger, right? He would forge signatures and create. He was really great at creating false seals, and that, he would create fake bank statements and tax returns. I mean, he even went as far as creating a fake accounting firm named after 20th century gangsters Mikey Cohen and Bugsby Siegel. He called it Cohen and Siegel. Okay. So this man was so knee deep in the fraud and in the scam of it all. That's what he was. In the end of the documentary, it says that Lou Pearlman stole over 500 million, but only 10 million of the money had been recovered. And it was nearly 2,000 people and individuals that invested with Pearlman for over 30 years. And that's how the docuseries concludes. It was the longest Ponzi scheme in American history. Docuseries, they use like AI to allow Lou to tell his side of the story. It was really weird at the beginning. You realize is that they're taking excerpts from his book that he wrote, and then they're using like AI generated to like show Lou talking some of these things. But what was interesting is that, some of these boy band members, they say that there's some great bonding moments that they had with Lou, and there's bonding moments that'll always be part of them, and they always hold like a good place in their heart. And AJ McLean credits Lou for giving Backstreet Boys a push. I mean, they were together for like many years, right? Before they hit it big, it was like 7 or 8 years, right? And, there were probably moments that they had as a group that I think humbled them, right? To get to where they're at right now. So, in the sense of like, when he was talking about having to like rehearse on a wood stage, and getting splinters. Maybe it was some of the reason why some of these band members continue to have such loyalties to each other, because of the maybe trauma, bond, and moments that they've all had in childhood with this man, but also like in adulthood, and then having to heal from that, having to move on from that, having to then say, okay, we're gonna be without this name. The name Lou Pearlman is always going to follow these individuals. But have they been successful without Lou Pearlman? Absolutely. They have. You can't take that away from them, Chris Kirkpatrick said that, he feels like people should remember Lou as a crook who got what he deserved in the end, and that there are people that are still in pain and hurting because of his actions. And at the same time, Lou Pearlman was what caused the crazy explosion that started in Orlando, Florida, with the idea of boy bands and, the competition between them. Michael Johnson, who was friends with Lou Pearlman after the fraud investigation and conviction and everything, he stayed friends with them, and he broke down in tears, and he was remembering just Lou. He said, in all of this, there's success on levels that has never been seen in pop history. And this is what Michael Johnson said. But the fact that all of this was financed by people's life savings is disgusting. And it's only now that I can look back, and that's the fucking monster. That's the monster that was my best friend. And so, like I said, people, they don't really know how to resonate with the relationship with Lou Pearlman. They really don't. They don't know what to make of it. They don't know how to project it. They don't know how to go into it. How do you come from it? What do you do, right? And at the end of the day, Lou Pearlman died alone, died in prison, right? They didn't even want to. His family didn't even want to collect his body from the morgue. They had it there. They had people calling, they were calling the morgue to find out about what's going on with Lou, what he died of, and everything. Some of these bandmates were talking about this. And they said some people didn't even want to collect his body, his family. They had to get, people together to help take his body to like the family plot. There's no headstone to it. There's this little thing that says Lou Pearlman on it, but there's nothing that, like, no flowers, no headstone, no nothing to help signal to say that this is where this man was laying. Honestly, like, the story of Lou Pearlman is about greed, right? Like, you don't win with greed. You don't win hurting people this way in the years and years. And I could see in some of the interviews with the bandmates, like, the level of frustration from them, because it's like, wait a minute. How do you resonate with this person that had some likable qualities about them, that had a lot of potential in his life, and this is what he did? How do you resonate with that? What do you do with that? And it becomes a story of, like, damn, like, yeah, what do you do with that? How do you resonate with that? I don't think you can, right? There are people in the documentary that believe that Lou could have made them whole. Lou could have made this better. Lou could have done something different. And it didn't happen because he didn't do right by them. He didn't. And I think even some people, like, said, you know, the frustrating part about Lou is that he never really thought that he did anything wrong, right? Even in his book, like, he never really thought that he did anything wrong. He didn't do anything wrong, that he was going to get out of prison, and he never did. He never did. How, as a millennial, do you guys consolidate with this piece of your history, your childhood history? I mean, if you remember this, if you bought the merchandise, if you bought the CDs, if you bought anything Backstreet Boys or NSYNC or O-Town or whatever, like, how do you resonate with this piece of, like, your childhood? If this was part of you, how do you guys resonate with that? It is so crazy to kind of, like, being in high school and watching some of the NSYNC and Backstreet Boys stuff and their rise to fame and the posters and just the craziness out of all of that. You would never know. Like, I think back that for me, it's like I would have never known that a lot of this was a con. I remember watching the O-Town Making the Band reality TV show, and that was right around the time of, like, reality TV, just people getting into reality TV. So it's a whole different era of what reality TV is now, in my opinion. But it was in its infancy, and Lou Pearlman knew how to bank from that. Okay. Who didn't want to be in a boy band? Who didn't want to be famous? Who wasn't willing to give it all up? Who was going to be there and complain? Very, like, when I see these shows now that I'm in my late 30s, watching some of this, I'm like, you would have been stupid to complain about not getting paid enough, not, overworking you. You would have been stupid to complain if you had the opportunity to become a Backstreet Boy, an O-Town, or an NSYNC, or even the women's group. But you would have never known, right? Like, some of us would have never known the amount of fraud that was going around, these promises. Like, who would have known? I don't know, y'all. Like, I just remember it's this idea of a fraud is so foreign to me, because it's like, when you have to work all your life for everything and nothing comes easy and nothing comes free. When I hear about these frauds and Ponzi schemes and all this bullshit that this man put people through, it makes me just wonder, well, what was my whole childhood about? Like, what were my teen years about? And I'm so glad that it wasn't solely on this. Like, let me just say this. I wasn't the kid that just, grew up. Like, I didn't have money to go to these concerts. We couldn't afford cable television. We were just happy every once in a while we get a snowstorm and there would be cable magically working on one side of the house. You'd make it work. You just plug in that cable plug to your TV because it's snowing, man. And that's when the cable was fucking clear. Suddenly you got, whether it was direct TV or some free cable, but you took it, girl, and you didn't complain because that's how life was. It was a different time. And I don't think that was legal, but you know, what you gonna do? Take me to jail now? I was maybe 13, 14. Sue me. Okay? Incarcerate me for the free cable during the snowstorm. I digress. Okay. So, but it was just amazing. You know, and luckily, my childhood didn't center around a lot of this. But there are portions of my childhood and my young adult life where I remember some of these teen bands. One thing we know about some of these boy bands is that it's not the lack of talent, but a lot of their careers were financed by people's monies and nothing was provided in return to them, right? Some of these people haven't even seen their money. Like some of these people have not seen their money. They were taken advantage of. If you think about it, the Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, O-Town, all these people, their careers were financed by hardworking people. Some people that worked years and years and, you know, gave their money to Lou Pearlman, who had a level of notoriety through these bands. What's left of Lou Pearlman? There have been people out there that have written really nice things about Lou Pearlman, you know, from people that he mentored. One specific person wrote his memorial site. Lou Pearlman was my mentor and a friend for a long time. I always knew he would be there for me when I needed advice. He called me the protege of my love for the music industry and creating singing groups. He constantly talked about one day walking out of the prison and redeeming himself and making things right again. I'm sad that my friend Lou left the prison, but not in the way he wanted. He talked with me about all the things he would do when he got out, never showing any fear or sorrow about where he was. He always looked to the future with hope. It's just so weird to see like a post like this, you guys, because of just the level of hurt that Lou Pearlman left behind, right? The level of fraud and scheming. Like, I think people have a lot of mixed feelings about Lou Pearlman. And I do kind of wonder, I have a lot of questions about things that haven't been revealed, things that haven't been said. How do you resonate with all of this? With this piece of maybe history or your life? Maybe you bought a shirt. Maybe you went to a concert. Maybe you got a CD. Maybe you have the posters all over your bedroom. How do you resonate with this? What do you make of it? I'll see you guys on the next one. Rabbits out. Bye, guys.